Productive Pastor 42, how an online writing class improved my ministry. What's going on, friends? You know, we took a month off. Replayed a bunch of old school Productive Pastor content. What was wild was folks really liked that a lot. Had a lot of fun engagement with the podcast on January. But I'm back. I'm going to talk today a little bit about why I took that space off, what I learned inside of the process, because honestly, it was 100% huge. It was totally cool, totally worth it. So I'm going to talk about Ship 30 and my experience on this episode. I've got a few days left in it, so you might still see some of those little tan and teal essays coming through. But before we jump into that, I want you to know about one thing that I have, and this is not a new thing with Productive Pastor. I'm going to share a new thing, a kind of a new thing, on the backside of the episode, so make sure you stick around to hear about that being a fun stuff. But it's this. It's the 515 email. I hear from folks a lot of times that are trying to answer basic productivity things, and this is who the 515 is designed for. The 515 is that one-on-one experience with productivity. It's the, Chad, things are a little out of control, and I don't know how to get them sorted out. The 515 is for you. It's a free email course. It goes across 5 days, and you get one email every morning. It's programmed to go live every Monday. There's going to be a 15-minute exercise that's in there, and it's a concentrated burst of productivity designed to give you workplace focus and clarity in your ministry, or honestly with whatever you're doing. So go to the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/pp/042. Find the icon for the 515, sign up for it, because it'll help you. So let's get back on with the main part of the show. What's going on? How an online writing class improved my ministry. It's my reflection on what I have learned doing the Ship 30 for 30. So this is what Ship 30 is. Ship 30 is the creation of two guys, Nicholas Cole, and I'm missing Dickie's last name here, but one of the other creators there, I've got to find this, y'all, because he's just such influence. It's like the stream of consciousness stuff that kind of flips on you. If you've ever thought that Productive Pastor is this, like Dickie Bush, that's it, Dickie Bush. So you ever thought that the show is this highly produced, highly just like well thought out thing? It's not. It's very stream of conscious. I have a outline in front of me in Notion right now because I like this kind of conversational style. But it is an online writing cohort. It's been going on for about a year and a half that Nicholas Cole and Dickie Bush developed, and it's about learning to do digital writing on LinkedIn and on Twitter, taking advantage of the algorithm, finding a way to hack the character limits, these sorts of things. And it's all about the atomic essay. An atomic essay is when you distill down to one singular thought. And I've been watching it for like a year and a half, thinking about doing it. Good buddy of mine, the Reverend Lamar Oliver here in Louisiana, he did it. I talked him into doing it. Lamar, if you're listening to this, I talked you into do this so I could see if it's worth the money or not. And he loved it. Lamar loved it. And so I finally decided I'm jumping on in January, going to do the sailing. And this is why. The first one is this. I wanted to learn to grow my written communication skills. I know that is a barrier for me, and I wanted to learn to get better at that. But more so was about how they teach people about audience clarity and how to refine a message. And stay with me here, because this might sound weird. Like, Chad, is this some sort of marketing thing? I know you're co-vocational, all that kind of stuff, but no. Like, I wanted to learn from this because I feel like it is important to learn from, and I'm going to share with you about that kind of later on down the road today. But here's the thing. I have fun on social, and I think Twitter, for me, is one of the best places for my work to expand, for me to think, for me to learn, for me to hear, all these sorts of things. And, that's also part of Ship 30, that Twitter is the ultimate filtering process because of the way the algorithm and Twitter works and engaging and seeing other people. That the idea that the atomic essay on Twitter is so much stronger than just a blog because of the algorithm. But doing the work and doing the process, brought me a lot of clarity towards me personally, towards what a local church ministry looks like, but also towards what Productive Pastor looks like. I had some fantastic threads of conversations about ministry walls, about being a ministry generalist or a specialist on Twitter, all those sorts of things. And a lot of those conversations are going to find their way into the podcast relatively soon. But what I want to do with this episode is I want to share a little bit of the clarity process that I learned, but also how it can affect our ministries in positive ways. One of the favorite frameworks that we learned the very first week in Ship 30 was all about understanding who we are speaking to. And I'm going to talk about sermon preparation a little bit, also preaching, but really drilling down into our understanding of our congregation, our community, and our context. So do me a favor, grab a piece of paper and let's jump into it at a big level here, because there's two things we're going to talk about. The first one's a bit expected, but the second, it's a bit different, but it can be really, really powerful. So, grab that piece of paper, write down some notes. I'm going to give you some homework at the end of this for you to think about and work on. But the first is this, and this is one of the things I learned. For who. You're going to do two things, and the for who is the first list you need to make. Who are the folks in your congregation, in your community, in your context? Think about what your demographics are. But also begin to think about the stories of people. What are the needs? What are the spiritual concerns that keep popping up more and more? Now, I've got a worksheet that goes alongside this, a congregational discernment worksheet. I'll give it to you for free. There'll be a link to that in the show notes. And that might help you out begin answering some of these questions on that piece of paper. But drill down into what the big questions or the big needs might need to be. And this is why I'm realizing this matters right now. It comes back to something I say when I'm giving people advice as a pastor, but also in coaching calls I have with folks right now. We're not necessarily the experts. Like, I'm not an expert in situations, but in ministry and as a coach, what I have the privilege of is I've had a lot of conversations with people, and I've seen where people have made mistakes before in the past, and I've seen where they've had successes in the past. It just goes to the broad range of experience that we have as ministry leaders, because we're relational by default. And it's just through this wider awareness that we can sometimes begin to see things. And, one of the things I've been having a lot of conversations with people, on Twitter, on back channel DM, through email, through coaching calls, through just other pastors I have relationships with, that sort of a thing. And is that there seems to be a unique disconnect right now between pastors and their congregation. It can be due to the widening gulf between politics and controversy, all the hashtag COVID type stuff, all that sort of stuff. But it's just the idea that a pastor, or it might even be the fact that the pastor just has a particular level of spiritual interest in things, but that cannot be assumed across the whole thing as the church. We talked about preaching islands before. This is very much part of that conversation. But to get over any sort of a ministry wall, and I don't think I've talked about that on the podcast yet. You're about to start hearing that phrase from me a lot, though. But for us to really get over any sort of a ministry wall, one of the things we need to be looking at is our understanding of how well we know our congregation and then our community and our context. Really, it's three layers of incarnation that's right there. So, on your piece of paper, do a favor, make a list of the two conversations that you have more than anything else in each one of those three groups. Like, what are the two conversations you have with people in your church the most? What are the two conversations you have with people in your community the most? And the two conversations about your larger context. But what are the things that they are talking about? What worries or anxieties are particularly present, but who uniquely inhabits your space of influence? In Ship 30, we talk about this is our audience and who we want to write for. But in ministry, it's not about who you're getting to pick out, but it's instead the idea of who has Jesus brought to you. Now, you might be serving in an established church inside of an appointment system or inside of a call system. You were sent to this place. Or you might be on church staff serving a particular demographic like kids ministry or student ministry, that sort of a thing. Even if you were starting a church, you will find the folks that you want to reach and the folks that you actually reach might be really different. And then as well, just churches, they shift and change over time. I know the folks that made up the church we started in the very first year and the folks that were there 8 years later were really, really different. And the funny thing was, it was some of the exact same people that were there, but they had changed, and you as the pastor changed, and the situation changes, all of this stuff. But understanding our ministry context is an incarnational activity. So that first question you're answering, the for who, is huge. But the next one was where it is a little weird, but I think it's a little important. It's the kind of thing that we need to think about and talk about in ministry. And it's this, so that. So you've got for who and so that. And the so that is where your research comes into play. But more than research, I'm hoping you're taking the time for lunches, for coffees, for conversations where the other matters the most. Think Martin Buber's I and thou stuff, because many times in leadership, our relationships exist along the plane of how can I grow this person to where they can be valuable to the ministry or valuable to the organization or valuable to me. And yeah, I'm going to leave that one right there because that's something that pastors have a tendency to do, especially those that feel pressured to lead with vision and strategy and that sort of a thing. But the so that, like, this is the place of dreams and visions, the stuff, the Apostle Peter was talking about. It's about where God might be taking folks or what conversations are already happening. And you, as the pastor, have a unique place to them in that story, as the pastor and preacher. And so the so that, it doesn't change what you do, but the so that changes how you do it. Like, friends, are you in the business of serving the way Jesus is moving, or stressing yourself out to potentially enact a vision that isn't appropriate or might not even actually exist inside of your congregation or community or context? And friends, let me tell you, that framework is already shifting my own local church ministry. It's weird. I've been trying to figure out this tension for the last 6 months. I serve 2 churches in a really, really part-time role. One of them is 45 minutes away. And the for who and the so that of my ministry has to take those things in mind as I ask myself what my role as a pastor looks like in those places. But it's also given me huge clarity over the ways I should be investing and should be spending and where I should be working inside of that realm. And it's also given me greater clarity over productive pastor and the language that we use with all of this. So that's where I've been this last month, is learning that. But let's get back into that piece of paper I told you to pull out. So make your list of for who, of where are the places that who are the people, what do they look like, what is going on, and then think of the so that. This is the unique ministry concerns that exist inside of the people in the places where you pastor. Now, you can go on, you can grab that congregational clarity worksheet for free in the show notes. You can make your piece of paper here then, but do those 2 things and then draw a line at the bottom piece of paper and ask yourself this question: how am I stewarding this? All great coaching comes with great conversations, and that's the question I want to give you today. How are you stewarding this? So that's where I've been this last month, the for who and the so that. And it's like I said, it's a really, really important and a critical thing and idea of ministry, is just to understand, who are we called to be with? Because that's going to drive our productivity. That's going to drive the ways that we create our own personal rhythms. That's going to drive the way that we create the systems, that we do the things, all of the sort of stuff. But if we're doing all of that tough, like nose to the grindstone productivity work, but we're doing it without a sense of who we're doing it with and who we're doing it for, it's just going to be a waste of time. John Wesley said, make the most of the time. We want to make the most of our time. So the new announcement, the fun announcement, is this. For all of the folks who bought the Season 1 workbook, thank you so much for really launching out the ability to do so much of Productive Pastor over the last year. And I always told y'all it was going to be updated and kept up and that sort of a thing, but I've got a new announcement to make. Last fall, I started going into the Season 1 workbook, which is a fantastic primer for personal productivity, if you don't have that, by the way. And I realized one of the biggest updates that needed to happen was the fact that this is a 90-page PDF. And it's just clunky to get around. So silently in the background the last month or so, I've been recreating the Season 1 workbook into my brand new Becoming Productive course. It has 11 modules, over 20 worksheets, exercises, videos, all of the things that came with the Season 1 workbook. But it's 10 times easier to traverse now. Like, you can get around it so much easier than you could back when it was a 90-page PDF. So, A couple announcements about this. Number one, if you bought the Season 1 workbook, you should have gotten an email today that gave you a code to just get the course for 100% free because you bought the workbook. This is just me keeping up my promise of keeping the workbook current. And so look for your email if you get that code. Now, if you did not get that email, that's because you did not click the little email marketing box when you purchase the course, and that means you can't get any emails from me about updates anyway. So email me, let me know if you want to get that transition, and I'll confirm that you bought that. Second thing, if you're saying, Chad, I never got the Season 1 workbook, and this sounds fun, you can go purchase it right now. There'll be a link to the Becoming Productive course in the show notes. It's $50 because that's what the Season 1 workbook is going to cost. $50. It's sealed. It's $50 forever. It's a tremendous amount of value. I mean, a huge amount of value for that cost. And so go pick up Becoming Productive. It's a fantastic way to build your own productive systems. I know the 515 is level 1. Becoming Productive is like level 5. Incredible value. I'll see you back in the next episode, but thanks for always being part of this amazing community.